Hello and welcome to the Comic Cave. I'm Ramsey, aka Captain Away, and today I'm looking at the 2020 to 2021 series, Shang Chi. And let me just start by saying that I'm probably going to butcher a bunch of Chinese names in this because the Chinese languages are not ones that I can do, so, sorry in advance for that. Anyway, the 70s saw a cultural wave of Kung Fu sweep the US, thanks largely to Bruce Lee and his films like Fist of Fury and Enter the Dragon. Consequently, everyone and their mothers wanted to cash in on the fad, and the big two comic companies of DC and Marvel were no exception. For one such comic, Marvel originally hoped to license the TV show Kung Fu, the one starring David Carradine, but when that failed, they moved on to instead licensing the old pulp villain Fu Manchu. Which was maybe not the best thing they could have done, considering the very large amount of controversy that has grown around that character and his universe in regards to racist depictions of Asian people in general and the Chinese in particular. But regardless of how we might feel about it now, it happened, and Fu got his own comic. In order to add to his extended cast, Marvel gave Fu Manchu a kung fu fighting son named Shang Chi. Shang would carry his comics to relative success during the duration of the 70s and into the early 80s, when Marvel would lose the rights to Fu Manchu and cancel all titles related to him. But since Shang-Chi was an original character, he would continue to appear in various titles throughout the Marvel Universe from time to time, with future discussions about the character's lineage just being left to more vague descriptions, with people usually saying things like, "your father," and making similarly vague references to him having somehow died after Marvel lost the rights to the character. Yes, he's dead. I'm sure that's it. That is, until Shang-Chi appeared in Secret Avengers, and in a story arc there, a new twist was added to this story. Shang's father never was Fu Manchu. Instead, that was simply an alias used by his real father, Zhang Zhu, who was every bit as much an evil mastermind, but in a less racist way. Maybe. This opened the doors for all kinds of new stories about the character, so it's maybe not all that surprising that it wouldn't be too long before he ended up in a title of his own, just in time for a movie based on him to come out. Funny how that worked out. This new series would be written by Gene Luen Yang, who rose to some fame with his comics American-Born Chinese, his comic book History of the Boxer Rebellion, and his work on the Avatar comic, and who I've mentioned previously on the channel for his fine but not exactly stellar run on the New 52 Superman series, and his absolutely stellar Superman Smashes the Klan series. So with GLY writing Marvel's greatest martial artist, will he live up to the cinematic adventure they're hoping to promote? Let's find out by kicking this off and taking this away. The comic opens a long time ago in China, sometime before or around the mid-1700s I guess, though our translation footnote here says translated from the ancient Mandarin. Less than 300 years ago seems fairly relatively recent to me to be using the term ancient, but hey. At least this is still an improvement from other Shang-Chi comics I've read, where it would usually say things like, translated from Chinese, like Chinese is a language. Anyway, fights and stuff. The Qing Emperor at this time had banned the practice of martial arts, a slice of real history for ya, and so these 5 practitioners are about to be punished, despite only wanting to help warn the local governor that he'd built his home in the way of some dragon lines, whatever dragon lines are. And that brings the dragon to his door, and not just any dragon, Fin Fang Foom. Aw yeah, you ready for a dragon fight? Well, too bad. Yeah, this is just a story being told about the past, only so we can be introduced to these two brothers. Younger brother Zhang Yi, who is calm, caring, and patient, and older brother Zhang Zhu, who isn't obviously going to become a villain at some point in the future. Oh wait. Yi and Zhu are sorcerers and martial artists themselves. In fact, they're the masters of the 5 other martial artists we saw earlier, who are the warriors of the deadly hammer, hand, staff, dagger, and saber. These 5 warriors would be the leaders of 5 houses, each also dedicated to their deadly weapon, called the 5 Weapon Society, and they would work together to defend China from threats, like Fin Fang Foom or foreign invaders. But eventually, Yi would die, apparently killed by his own brother Zhu for being too weak, and so that Zhu could steal his life energy to gain immortal life, a concept established in that earlier Secret Avengers story I mentioned. After this, the society would be reorganized into one of evil, headed by Zhang Zhu alone. Following the Boxer Rebellion, during which the House of the Saber Shrine to Zhang Yi was desecrated, Zhu also spread the houses to different countries, including France, Japan, Russia, and England, with only the Deadly Hand remaining in China. This is where Shang Chi grew up, apparently never knowing the truth about his own life or the history of the five houses. In true cult leader fashion, Zhang Zhu didn't even reveal to his followers that the world had modernized around them, forcing them to continue living as if the Qing dynasty had never ended. But now we get to the modern day, where Zhang Zhu is dead and his empire is controlled by the warrior of the Deadly Staff, as his cool little Simon Shrine tells us. Well, I mean, it would if the speech bubble wasn't covering the staff part, I promise. But the head of one of the other houses, Sister Hammer, has something to say about that, and she shows up vying for control and kills Brother Staff. But that super cool Simon board is somehow controlled by the magical spirit of Zhang Zhu, and even after Hammer kills Stick, which, when I say that out loud, sounds like one of those super complex versions of rock, paper, scissors, it doesn't bless her leadership and instead appoints the leader of the House of the Deadly Hand as the new leader of the Five Weapons Society. And the head of that house is Shang Chi. Hey look, our title character is in the comic now! Yay! Shang Chi has long ago left Zhang Zhu and his evil ways behind, instead embracing life in the bigger world by, apparently, taking a job at a bake shop in Chinatown, where he dazzles customers with his kung fu packaging skills and flirts awkwardly with the niece of the business owner, who's a big-time lawyer in the area. Shang also runs across an old contact of his, Leiko, a British-born Chinese who works with MI6. She informs him that his papa's old gang is up to its old tricks, which we know to be because Sister Hammer taking control. And can I just say, I enjoy Sister Hammer's design, especially in this bonus Jen Bartel cover where she just straight up looks like the last Airbender. Again, given the writer here, I don't feel like that can be a coincidence. But it seems there's also big trouble brewing right here in Little China, as Leiko and Shang get ambushed by some warriors from the House of the Deadly Staff. Only as it turns out, two of them are undercover agents who want to pledge their loyalty to Shang Chi, since he is Zhang Zhu's chosen leader. The two traitors are Takeshi, or Brother Saber, and Esme, or Sister Dagger. She's my favorite. She ain't got time for no one shit, and it's great. Always with the helpful comments, like how acid will take care of dead bodies, no problem. Oh, Sister Dagger, you're so practical. They explain a little bit to us about all of Zhang Zhu's houses and how Shang-Chi is the chosen new leader, but what really grabs Shang's attention is the mention of Sister Hammer and her tattoo, which Shang realizes can only be his long-lost sister, Xihua. And I'm sure I especially butchered that name, so again, sorry. When the two were growing up together in the House of the Deadly Hand, they snuck into a forbidden room to find Zhang Zhu growing an army of Chinese hopping vampires, or Jiangxi. As punishment for their indiscretion, Zhu burns the symbol into Xihua's head and permanently separates the two, sending Xihua to the House of the Hammer in Russia, where he constantly refers to her as a failure in comparison to Shang-Chi. But he tells Shang-Chi that his sister is dead, so now that he has learned otherwise, he feels a desperate need to go rescue her from the cult he managed to escape from himself. But, well, Sis doesn't seem to feel quite the same way. So Shang-Chi shows up to her base where she's waiting for him with all of her men. So, oh man, you ready for a big kung fu fight? Well, too bad. Yeah, they just, kinda hug it out and then have a banquet. Alright then. In fact, not only do they not fight, but Sister Hammer actually poisons Shang's favorite snacks, crystal cakes, and he just collapses to the floor and dies. Well, not dies, I guess. He wakes up in a lab to find that Xihua has taken over Papa's attempt to make Shang Chi with an army of her own of the hopping vampires. Still ill from the poison, Shang-Chi's not up to the task of fighting them. But luckily, Takeshi and Esme show up out of freaking nowhere to rescue him and take him to Sister Dagger's base, where he attempts to befriend the pair, despite not wanting at the same time to take his place as their leader. We also meet Master Ling, the current head of the House of the Dagger, I think? They actually never explain who he is, but, context clues, I guess? Between the poison and the wound he received from one of the Jiangshi, though, Shang-Chi is feeling sick and seeing ghosts of his dead dad, and even apparently feeling like he's becoming a Jiangshi, to the point that he feels an urge to obey Sister Hammer like he already is one of her undead army. But that ghost that he's been seeing also leads him to a cave with a horrifying dragon thing that likes to say yum. Like, a lot. Seriously, it really loves to say yum. The cave is also the burial spot of Zhang Yi, and when Shang-Chi honors his uncle, the spirit of the man shows up to clarify things for us. It seems that during the Opium Wars in China, Britain led an army of mystics, mindless ones, and even Dormammu to try and conquer China. With enough power to make even the Sorcerer Supreme balk, the aging Zhu and Yi were overpowered, and Yi was fatally wounded. But Zhu had the means to revive his brother by sacrificing his life to make Yi young and powerful again. But Yi disagreed, thinking only Zhu was strong enough and willing enough to lead the society alone, so he took the decision away from Zhu and sacrificed himself instead, giving Zhu the power to turn back the invasion. This is significant because it was when Zhu lost his brother that he lost the balance in his life, and that is what eventually turned him into an evil, world-conquering megalomaniac. Well, you know, that and, apparently, the endless parade of white foreigners coming over to China in attempts to seriously screw it over. You know how white men be. Anyway, the point is, Yi feels that Shang's desire to leave behind the cult entirely is him trying to leave a huge part of himself, his family, out of his life. And that's creating an imbalance in him, just like it did for Zhang Zhu. Not wanting that, Shang-Chi goes with his, I think, figurative brother and sister to stop his real sister, who is busy attacking London with her army of vampires. The Jiangshi need a sense of unrequited vengeance to maintain their undead life, and as Xihua attempts to take control of her Jiangshi-infected brother, he instead somehow follows a telepathic path of that grievance into some kind of mental plane, where we learn that all the Jiangshi are actually implanted with Xihua's own pain of feeling abandoned by Shang-Chi. Of course, as we know, that was all a lie told to her by Zhang Zhu to manipulate her. And when Shang forces her to confront that fact, the mental Zhu living rent-free in her head simply collapses, as do all the Jiangshi. But Sister Hammer isn't that easily convinced, and she attacks Shang-Chi, accusing him of also trying to manipulate her. Leiko attempts to help him and shoots Sister Hammer dead. Oh wait, no she doesn't, because Shang-Chi catches the freaking bullet? Say what? He can do that? Damn. And while everyone's distracted by this, cause I mean, who would it be? He just caught a freaking bullet. Xihua uses this opportunity to run away and disappear. With the battle over, Shang-Chi decides it's finally time to meet his destiny and assume command of the Five Weapons Society, with the intention of taking the society away from the criminal activities it had been participating in for so long and rededicating it to protecting China, and really all of humankind. But the ghost of Zhang Zhu shows up at the end to warn us that this story isn't over. Dun dun dun! Oh, but actually it is over. This is literally the last page. Oh well, guess that brings us to the breakdown. Honestly, I have so little to criticize with this story. I guess my biggest criticism is that, toward the end, that weird Yum Dragon convinces Brother Saber that if Shang-Chi does take control of the society, that he's going to become even worse than Zhang Zhu was. And we see Takeshi can't help but take that threat seriously. And then nothing ever comes of that. We also don't fully resolve the story, what with that ending cliffhanger and Xihua running away, But there is a second Jinluen Yang written Shang-Chi comic that is actually running right now, so I'd assume some of those payoffs are probably happening there. Beyond that, this comic is pretty great. I enjoy all the characters, the art is top notch, and GLY does a fantastic job of updating the character. I love how he has Shang-Chi give a reason for why he frequently spoke in aphorisms in past stories, and yet is perfectly capable of just talking like a normal human being here. It's also super easy to get into, even if you've never read a Shang-Chi story, because basically everything you need to know is very clearly and easily explained without falling into that typical comic book trap of repeatedly over-explaining absolutely everything. It's kinda nice. But perhaps my favorite part is the fact that just over 100 years after the creation of a character whose entire purpose was to racistly demonize and dehumanize all Chinese people, an actual person of Chinese descent who probably has friends and or family who live or have lived in China finally gets a chance to add to the mythos of that character. And the thing he chooses to do is humanize the character, showing him to be just another flawed human who faced a massive amount of adversity and eventually broke to the pressure, lashing out at people who had committed atrocities every bit as great as he would come to do himself. And for that reason alone, if nothing else, I would probably like this comic. But it does have everything else too, so I'm going to give this series a recommendation level of high. Even if you're not particularly interested in the character, it's a well-told and well-made comic, and if you are interested in the character, this may well be one of the best comics you can find for him. The collected edition gets one super cool Simon Shrine, which is a good thing in case for some reason saying super cool didn't clarify that. Yeah, it's only 5 issues, but it's also got a fantastic cover gallery and 2 pages of sketches and character design information from both the artist and writer. And hey, it's a good comic. Thank you everybody for watching, and I apologize again for any horrible pronunciations I did during this review. I literally couldn't find any good examples online for almost any of it. Anyway, let me know if you have seen the movie or are planning on seeing the movie or are interested in the movie at all, or if you've seen the movie, what you thought of it. I'll probably be seeing it soon, hopefully sometime after I finally watch Black Widow. And you know how it goes. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, as always, feel free to comment, like, subscribe, all the good stuff, and I hope to see you next time, right here, in the Comic Cave.